Hey, it's Les from the TV Dudes. This week, I'm excited to bring you my chat with Ben Rimalower. Ben is known in theater and cabaret for writing and directing Leslie Kritzer is Patti LuPone, and writing and performing the solo plays Patti Issues and Bad with Money. Bravo fans will recognize Ben from his many appearances directing Countess Luann's cabaret on Real Housewives of New York City. I chat with Ben about his love for theater and cabaret, what shows are like now in a post-pandemic world, what it was like recapping Real Housewives, and how strange it was to then appear on the show. It's a really fun chat, and I hope you enjoy.
Hello, this is Ben.
Hi, Ben. This is Les from the TV Dudes.
Hey, how's it going, Les?
Going well. Thanks so much for making a little bit of time today. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And so, I think I mostly know you from directing things or also acting in things like Patti Issues, and oddly from TV recaps, when you filled in on Vulture or recapping Real Housewives. And so I was excited to talk to you today because those are both odd things to do. I find on-stage theater, I mean, even before the pandemic, was always the running, oh my gosh, is theater almost dead? Are we about to lose theater? I myself was an art major in college, and so I got a lot of, painting's dead. Why are you doing this?
Yeah.
And so I always am fascinated what draws people to a particular part of the full scope of theater. But then also I find TV recapping to be a particularly odd niche form of writing to do, and was interested to talk to you about it. When it comes to performing, directing, writing, is there one of those words in that hyphenate that you kind of feel that's me and I got to do the other two things if I want them done? Or do they all feel equal to you? Did you find yourself kind of always wanting to do all of it?
No, I mean, I had, for all of my teenage years and my 20s and the first half of my 30s, I did not want to perform. I only wanted to direct and write, and I was really focused only on directing. And then I found in directing that I was limited by having other people's material and not the things that, that were what I wanted to put out there. So that's what motivated me writing. And then the performing was really an offshoot of that, because the stories that felt most compelling or accessible to me, or, whatever, my most comfortable way to starting out as a writer, at least, was really my own personal experiences. And so, the right way for me to do those initially, at least, was performing them myself. And I have a very performative personality, so it wasn't that big of a transition for me to make, even though I hadn't been performing since I was a kid.
Did you find that it kind of paid backwards, that as you learned to be a performer, you had a different language that you could speak to your actors as a director, or maybe a better knowledge of how your written word will land when it's actually said, now that it's coming out of your mouth?
It definitely helped me as a writer, being a performer. I mean, I've learned so much from audiences about how to write better, And I don't know, though, about being an actor, about how the performing experience has informed me as a director. I think that even just from my acting as a kid, I had that information already. And to me, the lessons of directing are so much about the interpersonal navigation of the people in the room on the project, or, the egos and insecurities and politics and all that. And it's not really about, for me, the challenge of directing is all that stuff, as opposed to the conceptual, sort of purely artistic stuff of what's actually, wanting to be on the stage.
You had said learning from the audience. One of the particulars of live theater, I think, that that maybe, film writers and TV writers don't get, is that immediate feedback of watching something hit or not hit with a crowd, and
Totally.
watching a room full of people take your writing to a different emotional space maybe than you might have even expected.
Yeah.
Have you had moments where it maybe changed your writing a little bit? Have you ever felt like across your career the audience is kind of, all right, well, I know I have a tendency towards this kind of joke, and I've got to do it this way instead. I'm just wrong. Have you ever?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's, I don't know that it's maybe that, sort of, binary of like, I have to do this instead, I'm wrong. I mean, it's definitely about like, they feel like they go together. Like I have an ultimate goal of what I want to say for myself, and the audience is leading me to understanding how best to convey that to them in a way that they will appreciate, But yeah, I guess I would say that. I mean, there's differences between what I'm learning from the audience in the room, the live audience experiencing it, versus the sort of, finding audiences in terms of like where I'm able to get more tickets sold, or, and that becomes stuff that, obviously people in film and television and other avenues can relate to more. I mean, even just us, on Twitter, we see, oh, wow, this got so many likes and retweets and that didn't. And, you start to make sense of that, like reading the tea leaves. So, that probably more to what you're saying as far as like, oh, I was wrong, this was right. The stuff from the live audience, I think, is more about just language and, when it, for example, if it's something as simple as not simple, but, something as clear cut as a joke where you just want the biggest laugh possible, getting a sense of what is actually clarity and what makes sense and what is something that was funny to you in your head, but you're not making clear enough. And then on the opposite side of the spectrum, when are you beating it over the head, and when would subtlety pay off more? All that is definitely about the live audience experience.
I loved reading the description of the cast-off shows that y'all were doing.
Yeah.
Just for the Sunday NPR game show vibe of stuff like Name That Belt and Dolly Concert.
Yeah.
When it comes to workshopping stuff like that, can you talk a little bit about kind of coming up with that show and leaning into that cabaret game fun?
Sure. Well, it's all funny. I mean, going even back to your previous question, the shows that I've had the most success with prior to this were my solo plays, Patti Issues and Bad with Money, which have a lot of comedy in them, but they're very dark and intense. Because I perform them in these solo venues, I've done them in proper proscenium theaters. I mean, and they are plays. They're not stand-up comedy and they're not cabaret. I mean, I don't sing in them really, but somehow I've had an easier time getting them booked in cabaret spaces and comedy spaces, and it's been easier for me to get booking in gay spaces. And so I found myself alongside stand-up comedians and drag queens on these different bills around different places in the world. And I've often felt, oh, God, I could sell more tickets and be more successful here if I were doing something that was just entertainment instead of, if I'm at some beach resort somewhere up against these drag queens and comedians, people are not necessarily in the mood for the sort of heavy trip that these solo plays were. And so I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I want to find some project that's more light and just pure entertainment and not so heavy, and that is how I didn't intend to do that, though, when I started this podcast with my co-host, Daniel Nolan, and we were just doing something that was just about sort of, it was a podcast. I mean, it wasn't a live thing, so I wasn't even thinking in those terms. And then during the pandemic, we were wanting a more immediate connection with our regular listeners who were giving us so much great feedback on social media. And so we started a live stream, and that became something different than the podcast was. I mean, it wasn't interviews with celebrities. It was really just about these fun things we were doing in the interaction. You know, these people would comment on either Facebook or YouTube or whatever in real time, and we'd be watching that as we were doing it, and we would respond to them. So then we came up with the idea of playing games with them to take advantage of that ability that we had not had in the podcast, which was, you know, pre-recorded and edited and whatever. And then we had the idea to do that in the live theater, as, you know, the vaccines and pandemics, you know, slowing down or whatever the hell, you know, but we're all back in the world more than we were 2 years ago or whatever. And so, you know, now it sort of feels like an answer to my original thought of like, what could I do that would be just lighthearted and entertainment? And the inspiration for those particular games was also very organic like that. I mean, Name That Belt is something that I think, without making it into a formal game, I've played with friends for years, because we're these sort of, you know, those kind of like theater people that, you know, if you listen to a Lizzo song or Adele or whatever, everybody knows they're singing it, because in, you know, rock and pop music since the 1960s, artists write their own material. It's not like, oh, there's a new song in Guys and Dolls and Frank Sinatra and Rosemary Clooney and Ella Fitzgerald all recorded. I mean, everybody is sort of proprietary with their songs in rock and pop for the last 60 years.
Yeah.
But in theater, you know, that's not the case. I mean, there's a writer and composer, and then, you know, you have Patti LuPone or Idina Menzel or, you know, whoever. And so we listened to a lot of that music still. And, you know, we'd always say, oh, listen to this song of that great song from Waitress. It's not Sarah Bareilles or, you know, Jessie Mueller, who won the Tony for the role. Or did she win the Tony? I don't remember. She was nominated. But, you know, listen to this great version. You'll never believe, oh, this is Shoshana Bean. Oh, this is Heather Headley. This is whoever. And, you know, we'll always play it and, you know, sort of make our friends guess. So we sort of, we're having so much fun doing that in normal life that, you know, me and my buddies on Fire Island in the same house all summer and sitting on the beach all day, we quantified that. And the same thing with Dolly Concert Kill, where Marry Fuck Kill I've always just thought that was such a fun game. I mean, I even remember years ago, I knew different versions. People called it Marry Fuck Kill, or they called it Shuck Fuck Marry, or then I think another friend of mine called it Cliff, because it was like, who would you marry, who would you fuck, and who would you push off a cliff? But it was all the same idea. And then I remember someone had told me a version of that where it was like, who would you marry, who would you fuck, and who would you make your wedding planner? Or maybe I'm getting it wrong. Who would be your best man? Who would be your wedding planner? There was all these, you know, permutations.
Yeah,
and because we were always sort of fantasy casting musicals, and especially these sort of big leading lady shows like Hello Dolly, and, you know, most recently it was Bette Midler had the big successful Broadway revival, and then but Donna Murphy, who's less famous and is just a Broadway talent, although she's in the Gilded Age now, but she was doing the Tuesday night shows because Bette Midler didn't do all the shows in the week. Because why should she? She's Bette Midler. She gets a night off, you know. But of course, all my friends had to see Bette Midler and Donna Murphy. And then when Bette left the show and Bernadette Peters took over, of course, we all had to see Bernadette.
Yeah.
Of course. So it's comparing and contrasting all of those. And so Dolly Levi was such the thing. So we had the idea, instead of Marry, Fuck, Kill, to see who would you want to see as Dolly Levi versus who would you want to see as in concert. And then, of course, the, you know, perennial favorite, who would you kill?
Who would you just kill?
Yeah.
That's great. And so I tell folks where they can best hear all of this fun and see all this now.
Well, they can catch me on all the social media, the Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and YouTube, Ben Rimalower. I'm actually not on TikTok, even though I'm on TikTok as a fan to enjoy it, but I think it's a little unseemly for someone of my advanced age.
I'm old enough that I watch my TikTok on YouTube.
Exactly. But maybe that will change. And then, of course, they can listen to the Broken Records podcast wherever podcasts are available. And we're working on a new thing to have with the Cast-Off show to be online, but we haven't figured that out yet. But in the meantime, they can come see us live every Wednesday at 6:30 at Club Cumming in East Village.
I didn't admit to, and I didn't even touch on the Real Housewives recaps, which I find hysterical. Whenever I'm trying, I very rarely write reviews of things or as such, and I'm usually just on a podcast where someone goes, "Les, hot take," and I just rant. It's great. And so I don't really have, personally, it's always super difficult for me to get into like an editing, writing mode with something like a recap and not lose the fun of it. Somehow it works differently than when I'm trying to write a script or what I think of as more of a creative thing.
Totally.
I find your recaps to just be hysterical. I mean, they're from a few years ago now, but they're great. They keep that tone all the way across.
Well, they stopped hiring me because I was on the show.
That's what I was going to ask, but the particular odd bit of it is, I think one of the ones I was just reading earlier today, or rereading, it talks specifically about the audiobook, and you're like, yes, full disclosure, that is me.
Oh, well, that was a one-time deal, so I think they forgave me for that. But then I was on New York, so then I was on for 4 seasons. Mm-hmm. I was directing Countess Luann's cabaret show. And so then I was never again hired at Vulture. But that Jersey thing was fun because I did get to recap myself that one time.
And of course, I killed it. I was great in this.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much for chatting with me about it all today. And
my pleasure. Anytime.
Can't wait to see what you do next with Cast-Offs. And
thanks so much.
Have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too.
TV Dudes is an independently run podcast out of Austin, Texas. We are exclusively listener supported. If you'd like to help us out, go to patreon.com/TVDudes.
You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at TV Dudes. All the music for our show is done by our friend and original TV Dude, Gregory J. Amani Smith.
To find out more about us, go to thetvdudes.com. I'm Randy Lander.
I'm Les Weiler.
And I'm Kyle Scott.
Thanks for listening.